I, Cynthia Luzak, duly elected county clerk for the county of Bay, and by the power vested in me by election to this office, hereby call this organizational session of the board to order this third day of January 2018. Would everyone please answer to roll call? Commissioner Durancheck.
Here.
Krieger.
Yes.
Bigot.
Here.
Coonan.
Here.
Herrick.
Here.
Ryder.
Here.
And Lutz.
Here.
All members are present. Thank you very much. Would you please stand for the invocation and the pledge? Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, your generous goodness comes to us anew every day by the work of your Holy Spirit. Lead us to acknowledge your goodness and give thanks for your benefits, Lord. We ask today that you guide this board as they select their officers for the new year. Give them the courage of their own convictions so that they can work for the common good of all. May your divine providence guide your county and bring dignity, prosperity, and respect to every citizen in this community. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business this afternoon will be the appointment of the county clerk as the temporary chairperson. Would someone so move?
So moved. Support.
Thank you. Moved by Durancheck, supported by Herrick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next order of our business will be the election of the chairman for the Bay County Board of Commissioners for the year 2018. Nominations are now in order for the office of chairman for the year. Are there any nominations from the floor? Commissioner Lutz.
I nominate Commissioner Tom Herrick as chairman.
Support.
There's a support. Moved and supported. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations from the floor? Commissioner Herrick, were you willing to accept that nomination?
Yes, I am.
Okay. As you have been nominated and have accepted that nomination, and with no other nominations from the floor, I would ask that a motion to close the nominations be moved and that a unanimous ballot be cast for Commissioner Herrick.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported, Durancheck and Lutz. We have a roll call on the motion, please. Durancheck.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Bigot.
Yes.
Coonan.
Yeah.
Herrick.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
And Lutz.
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We will now elect the vice chairman to the board at this time. Are there any nominations from the floor? Commissioner Herrick.
I would nominate Commissioner Durancheck for vice chair.
Okay.
Support.
Moved and supported. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations for Vice Chair 2018? Seeing no other nominations from the floor, Commissioner Durancheck, are you
Yes, I
willing to
will.
accept that nomination?
Yes, I will.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. At this point in time, then, we would accept a motion to close the nominations and cast unanimous ballot for
So
Commissioner
moved.
Durancheck. Moved by Herrick, supported by Lutz. Another roll call would be in order for this seat as well. Commissioner Krieger.
Yes.
Bigot.
Yes.
Coonan.
Yes.
Herrick.
Yes.
Ryder. Lutz.
Yes.
And Durancheck.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Durancheck. That being said, we do need to elect a Sergeant at Arms for the year 2018. Do I hear any nominations from the floor?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Bigot.
Thank you. Was there support?
Support.
Thank you. Commissioner Herrick? Are there any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations for Sergeant at Arms 2018? That being said, Commissioner Bigot, will you accept that nomination?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. That being said, the next order of business would be a motion to close the nominations and to cast unanimous ballot for Commissioner Begek for your Sergeant at Arms 2018. Someone move?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Durancheck, supported by Herrick. Roll call vote would be in order, starting with Commissioner Begek.
Yes.
Coonan.
Yes.
Herrick.
Yes.
Ryder.
Yes.
Lutz.
Yes.
Durancheck.
Yes.
And Krieger. 7 yeas, 0 nays. That would conclude the business of the temporary chairman. Mr. Herrick, would you please now assume your role as chair for 2018?
At this time, is there any public input? Anyone who'd like to speak to the commission, please step forward, and we'll be glad to listen. Seeing none, we'll move to petitions and communications, of which we have none. Is there any unfinished business? Any new business? Miscellaneous? Announcements? It's going good so far.
Motion to adjourn is always in
Good
order.
job, it's too easy.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
I'd like to bring the Ways and Means Committee to order this Wednesday, January 3rd, 2018 at 4:12 p.m. Roll call.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Durancheck,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Begek,
Yes.
Coonan,
Yes.
Ryder,
Yes.
Herrick,
Yes.
one present.
Thank you. Before you, you have minutes from 12/5/17. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have public input. Any of those people in attendance that would like to speak before the committee, may do so at this time. Step right up. Take a number. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to petitions and communications. Under item A, we have the MHT Incorporated Center Ridge Arms. This is a continuation of discussion on the proposal from before. What is your pleasure? I did submit some questions. I believe all of you commissioners have received those of mine. And then I issued some other questions on the questions. And we'll probably hear the answers to those secondary questions, maybe, and maybe not.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. We do have two representatives from NHT again present at the meeting to answer any additional questions. I believe that the additional questions that you had written on your email can be answered today for the most part. I have given those to Mr. Getzgeld from NHT, so he can speak to those questions and any other questions that the commissioners may have during today's meeting.
So while they're preparing, does any of the commissioners have any comments or questions on the questions?
Quick question about the residents. I don't know if there's been any feedback from residents. I'm assuming they're been made aware of it, so maybe the manager of the facility can tell us if there's been any comments from residents that are, I haven't gotten any calls, so.
As of right now, not a lot. We haven't really said much to the residents because we don't want to give them the opportunity to think that something of this magnitude will happen We found with something as simple as putting new washers and dryers in, something to back up, they get really upset about it. I don't want to give them any false information, so until I was to be given a confirmation from the Board of Commissioners and or Executive Barsha that this was going forward, then we would be able to arm ourselves better with more information to give to the residents as for that. So, as of right now, there's not too much out there.
Sounds like a good deal for the residents. If I was a resident there and you're gonna get, get remodeled and get your stuff taken care of, just on the surface of it, it seems good. So,
Yes, it does seem good on the surface.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I just indicate, we did, in one of our community activity room sessions, talked about the possibility of it happening, and actually the residents were quite ecstatic. It pretty much is infrastructure that dates back to 1980, and it's in need of a lot of attention and repairs. Wouldn't you agree, Zach? I mean, the staff, Janelle Box and Jeremy, who's, I think, here, as well as Dudley and Janelle Box and Zach, they do get a lot of almost daily and weekly complaints about infrastructure out there. So didn't want you to think there is excitement, but as Zach mentioned, we just said we might pursue it, but we didn't want to hold out hope that it would happen until we have some justification that it will, and then I'm sure they would all be very, very pleased. But because a lot of the infrastructure is getting so old it can't be replaced, we're going to have to go with new stuff. To repair some of the systems, you'd have to get parts that were on the market in 1980, and they're pretty much obsolete.
Right, Commissioner Hare.
What are a couple of your longer standing projects and how long have you had them?
The first projects, well, let me start by saying, again, my name is Brian Gallagher with MHT. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I've been with the company for 14 years now. And thank you for having us tonight. We appreciate it. Our original projects we did were back in 1991. And in 2006, we recycled those deals and for a new round of tax credits. So we still have those same deals from 1991. So if that answers your question, our original deals we did from 1991, we still own today, and we've actually recycled them. The original deals we did were in Detroit, and we've been doing them ever since. We've got 51 properties right now, and we got about 6,000 units.
How many do you think you've recycled through the 15-year process?
We have recycled probably about 15 deals. We're actively, we have 3 of those that are finishing up their rehab right now. And we have 3 more that we're getting ready to start in the spring on construction.
Okay, thank you.
So we just wait. We've got a chart at the office that has all of our deals. And it basically says, you know, once the 15 years is up, then we know that we can go to that next deal to recycle that deal. So we're going through our deals, but at the same time, we also do new deals, new construction, and new acquisition rehabs.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ryder.
The county has a prevailing wage ordinance in place, and my question is well, the prevailing wage for days they can be included in that.
If we end up, which what our plan is to do a HUD loan. If you end up doing a 221D4 loan, it does require prevailing wage to be utilized.
Is that, and is that federally or is it state or because they're different?
I apologize if we had some of our construction people here, but I believe it's federally mandated. They have a federal chart that shows all of the wages for all the different, you know, whether it be a carpenter, electrician, plumber.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't answer that because it is a HUD loan, it would be under Davis Bacon.
Okay. Thank you.
And any time, Commissioner Ryder, federal funds are available. I was on transportation infrastructure for 10 years, and we always insisted Davis-Bacon prevailing wage, and it had strong bipartisan support. There's no division at the federal level between Republicans and Democrats. We do, though, I think, I could stand corrected, but is there still a petition drive to put prevailing wage at the state level and here in Michigan? But it currently pertains to both state revenues that are expended as well as federal revenue. And since this would involve federal revenue, it would clearly be under all the provisions of prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon both, I would assume.
Just to follow up to that, only a portion of the funds are coming from the feds. The others are in the form of construction loan. So would that also fall underneath the construction loan portion of?
Yes, yes. Any work that's completed by contractors at the property, 100% is required, even with the utilization of construction loans or tax credit equity. Yeah.
Okay, I'll cover both.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kuhn.
Now, you guys are gonna do an assessment of the entire facility. And I know, I'm not against this at all. And I have never heard of anything, of any major problems over there that needed to be addressed at this time. So how do we know that if there is something that needs to be addressed, that it's something your assessment is going to determine that we're going to, or that you're going to update it? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about HVAC, electrical, plumbing, or any of this.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great question. With what happens when you apply for these tax credits and also getting our new HUD loan, they end up having a certified needs analysis that's done on the property, and that's an independent firm that's hired by the HUD lender. And that report could definitely be shared with the commissioners and anybody who's involved in the project that wanted to see it. But that report details out for the next 20 years on an annual basis what needs to be completed at the property. And basically what they do is they go through the units, they go through all the mechanicals. These are engineers that put together these reports, and they determine all the work that needs to be done. They bring all of that work back into year one because they want all of that work to be completed in year one to make sure that project can be feasible for the next 20 years. What's also another piece of that report that comes out from those results is what needs to be deposited today in a replacement reserve account and what needs to be funded annually to ensure certain things that are not going to last 20 years. For instance, carpet replacement, appliances. So they go in this report and they detail out in the future what needs to be funded in the replacement reserve on an annual basis and what needs to be funded today. And they the HUD lender can play around with that a little bit. If you put more in today when you close on the deal, then obviously less has to be funded on an annual basis going forward. Or if less is funded today, then. But it usually comes out with a lot of these HUD loans that you're funding about approximately somewhere between $300 and $400 per unit per year. But that's also after an initial a large deposit in or replacement reserve that's required by the certified needs.
So HUD has a number of these facilities throughout the country.
Yes.
And over a period of time, 30 years, 35 years, if they don't have in their annual monies that they give to these facilities to do this type of work, then is this a common practice for somebody to, like yourself, to seek the tax credits to renovate this? Or does HUD have a program itself where they'll take a facility that's 35 years old and give money to update things?
They do not, unfortunately. The Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program was part of the Tax Reform Act in 1986, and it's the sole federal subsidy that is utilized for just this purpose. And it's only available for low-income housing tax credit properties, affordable properties. So if somebody had a market rate property, they could they could apply to get a funding round of low-income housing tax credits, but they would have to immediately have the tenants vacated from the property and have a whole new tenant mix for income qualification. So this is the only program that is available, and it's basically brought in from the outside investor because they're buying those low-income housing tax credits. Now, ultimately, we know they're getting a tax write-off, so ultimately the federal government is funding it through the tax credits. But it is the only program
And
that...
this is, all of their low-income facilities are, over a period of time, whether it's 30, 35 years, refurbished through tax credits.
Correct, yep. Now, if after 15 years, we have not did this, but after 15 years, if somebody decided that for some reason they did not want to continue with that property, the property can be sold,
So,
but whoever purchases the property has that tax credit regulatory agreement that requires it to continue to be income restricted.
there were some years there, 10 years, 15 years, 35 years, what's that all about? It's kind of somewhat confusing.
So the low-income housing tax credits are, they're good for 10 years.
Okay.
So it's a piece of paper. If you get a single building, you get one piece of paper. It's called an 8609, and that lists how much tax credits are available on that property on an annual basis. And that single form is filed every year with the tax return for 10 years. So if you get a $1 million low-income housing tax credit reservation, then you end up with $10 million of low-income housing credits over a 10-year period. You can only take $1 million a year. And so after those 10 years, there's an additional 5-year compliance period that within that 5-year compliance period, if you end up renting to anybody that is over income in a unit, then you can end up losing the tax credits going back that you've already claimed on that project. So they basically monitor it for 5 years after that 10-year period to ensure that there's not anybody that moves in that's overqualified, and if they do, then you can lose tax credits. Now, after that 15-year period, you still have a regulatory agreement that you're required to rent to low-income housing tenants that are that income restricted. But if somebody is, after that 15-year period, if there is somebody that's rented to, they still want you to correct that, get that unit re-rented with somebody that's income qualified, but after that 15-year period, there's no recapture of tax credits, so they can't come back and say, we need you to give the tax credits back because you had somebody overqualified in that unit.
So tax credits are purchased by somebody that wants to reduce their taxes. And then the county and MHT become partners in this, 5149.
Correct, yes, of the general partnership.
Now, how do you guys make money?
We make money through the developer fee and through annual cash flow at the property.
Okay. So you get 49% of the cash flow, we get 51%.
Correct, yep.
Now, what was this, some discussion in about selling the property, getting it appraised, and explain that.
Yep. Any time after, most of our investors that are involved in the low-income housing tax credits, after that 10-year period, they usually want to be into the compliance period, like 1 or 2 years, usually around anywhere from year 12 to year 14, the investors are contacting us, which this happens. We have deals that are recycling every year, so they contact us and they say, they either say, we're interested in, are you guys wanting to re-syndicate this project? Because we would like to, be a partner as a new limited partner in the deal to apply for a new round of low-income housing tax credits. Or in many cases, they're just interested in getting out of the project at that point. And we've had investors come and go in the low-income housing tax credit world, so some of them that were in it, for instance, Chevron was one of our investors years ago on a couple properties that we had. Today, Chevron is not buying low-income housing tax credits, so they're no longer in the market. So when that investor wants to get out of the deal, it's all spelled out in our operating agreement from day one with with the investor, and that's the 99.99% investor for the low-income housing tax credits. And they end up wanting to get out of that deal. So we have a deal in Lansing, a deal in Grand Rapids, and a deal in Belding, Michigan, just to give you an example. And Fifth Third Bank was our low-income housing tax credit investor initially. And so they ended up doing evaluation of the property and came back and told us that we'll be willing to give you our interest for $1 just so that we can be out of the deal. So we're completing that transaction now. We take over their limited partner interest, and then we go ahead and submit for a new funding round of tax credits. And in this case, the old investor is going to also be in the new deals also. They're interested in being in the new deal. But there's no requirement to keep that investor in the new deal. So even though they want to be in it, when we submit the low-income housing tax credit application and we submit them as the investor, if we end up finding another investor that is willing to pay a higher price for the low-income housing tax credits, we're able to switch investors and do that. But generally, we have long-term relationships with a lot of our low-income housing tax credit investors, and we don't submit a deal unless a deal works well. And so generally, the pricing is there and where it needs to be, so we're not really into switching out investors after we submit our tax credit application. But on occasions, sometimes investors may say, hey, we're not in the market right now, we got into too many deals, so we have enough tax credits, so they give us the opportunity to go and get a new investor.
So they're the investors, so you got the investor, then you got the partnership between us and MHT. Is that a partnership forever?
So the limited partnership ends up being a partnership to where there's always, at the beginning of the deal, there's always language for dissolution, because the limited partners just don't want to be in the deal forever. So usually, not usually, but in the partnership agreement, it'll state that either during or after the compliance period, the limited partner will exit.
And you're the limited partner?
The limited partner is the investor.
Right, I understand that.
So the general partner is MHT and Bay County.
Right.
And then
So when the investor decides to leave, how are we responsible for anything?
No, not at all. MHT is the sole, even with the limited partner in and the limited partner out, MHT is the sole guarantor on the deal.
Okay.
And
But we're sharing things forever.
correct, yeah. Except we were in the MOU, just the draft MOU, we have language in there that has the Bay County would have the right of first refusal. So if we get that limited partner exits the deal, then Bay County has the option of having us exit the deal and just staying in there as a sole owner of the property.
But that would cost us money.
That would not. No, it would not. No.
Well, other than, if there's an existing mortgage on the property, the mortgage is then going to become the responsibility of Bay County if they exit the agreement before the mortgage is paid.
Well, it would not. So these HUD loans are non-recourse loans, so Bay County would not be responsible for the mortgage, but the property itself would, Center Ridge Arms, just because they're non-recourse loans, so there's no guarantees on them. But yeah, in taking over the property, it's not free and clear. It's a 35 to 40-year loan on the property, so that's still amortizing and being paid.
But it's being paid out of the cash flow, so it's...
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and when we go get these HUD loans, and with us being the guarantor on the deals and all of the work that's involved in the due diligence on these deals, MSHDA and also will not give a funding round of tax credits, and HUD will not give a loan unless they're 100% confident it's a very solid deal, and otherwise they just don't want to give a loan. They don't want to see a property fail.
So we don't know how much the loan is going to be for yet.
I had one of the follow-up questions that I had received when I got here was asking it says, is there any guess on these amounts? What we had in just the initial draft pro forma was 1.7 million.
Over how long?
Over 35 to 40 years. It's in there as a 35-year loan.
And then, just so I understand this, how much tax credits are going to be sold?
I can tell you.
Will the tax credits cover the 1.7 million?
What's that?
Will the tax credits cover the 1.7 million, or does some of that have to be paid off through the rental?
Yeah, all of the 1.7 million will be paid out from the rents. And the total, what's the annual amount of credits? $598,000. So $600,000 is the annual amount of the credits. And then the tax credit equity coming in is $5.6 million. So that money coming in, along with that 1.7
Is there
million.
enough money generated through rents to pay that 1.7 million over?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And the way that HUD, they underwrite that out for the full term of the loan. And so they're to ensure that that property is able to pay off that loan.
Question. The Commissioner, any change, I asked you before about the tax credits from the change in the tax law. Has there been any change in the tax credit part of it? I don't remember seeing that piece, but.
Yeah, there is, now that the, and that's a great question, now that the corporate tax rate is settled in at 21%, the pricing, the investors that were out there were not sure where the pricing was going to sit, because there was talk that it was going to go down to 15% at one point and 25%. So a lot of the investors had already been underwriting around the 20, I'm sorry, actually it ended up at 21%, not 20. But all of the investors had been underwriting around that 20% mark, because they didn't feel that it was going to go all the way down to 15, but they felt it was going to be below 25. So the tax credit dollar amounts are starting to settle in at the pricing where they're at now, but the pricing has, it has dropped a little bit from, because a lot of the investors out there had it at 25%, so going from 25 down to 21, has reduced it. But we find investors kind of all over the board, and when I say all over the board, within like maybe 5 to 7, 8 cents of each other, just because they have different requirements for investing. Some of them are investing for, as I talked about, I think last time I was here, for most of the banks for the CRA needs that they're required to invest in certain areas. So the banks are still there, and and their pricing is held to where they've been quoting it at in regards to where the corporate tax rate was going to end up. Some of the other investors, their pricing has dropped because they're not required to do their investments, so they're not getting, killing two birds with one stone and investing in those CRA areas and also getting the tax credits and the losses.
Is there an advantage in applying on the April deadline as opposed to the October deadline?
I guess, that's a great question too. The one advantage is it's a long process. Getting a HUD loan is generally a 4 to 6 month process in applying and actually being able to close on that loan. With a lot of the deals that we do, earlier is better for us, just due to the fact that we can get everything started sooner on a property and start getting it renovated. We never know exactly, none of us know exactly what's going to happen with building materials and the economy and the pricing of low-income housing tax credits, because it can be volatile. And so it's always better for us to try to get in early. The second piece of it is there's a new, MSHA comes out with a plan. It's called the Qualified Allocation Plan. And they come out with a new plan that they make minor adjustments to what those requirements are in submitting a tax credit application. And October is going to be a new qualified allocation plan. But even if we go to MSHA right now and ask them if there's going to be any changes or what those changes may be, they don't know that yet either. So there will be a new qualified allocation plan that will come in October. So we always just try to get it in as early as possible, mainly for those two reasons. And pricing, we just don't know what's going to happen. It's low-income housing tax credits until you get an investor locked in. It can, depending upon the economy. We were shocked at when there started being tax reform, kind of took us by surprise. And, originally, we were thinking, we've met with a lot of investors over the past year, and a lot of them are, a year ago, a lot of the investors and their representatives were saying they didn't think tax reform was ever going to happen. We went a year ago, we were in Lansing, and we heard a lot of them on a panel, and they said, we just don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to get done. And so then when it started getting closer, everybody started getting nervous, and that's when the pricing dropped, and everybody started saying, this could happen. The pricing, the tax rate could drop to 20%. It could drop to 15%. So it's, we just are not sure exactly what's going to happen in the foreseeable future in regards to the economy and pricing of tax credits.
Yeah, if we were to be approved in the October funding cycle, then before any money could be released to begin renovations, we'd be looking at spring of 2019 maybe, or summer? What's the lag time?
Spring to early summer of 2019, correct. Yep.
I just had maybe a couple more questions, if I may. So the limited partner is actually the person or the group that funds the construction loan, correct?
The limited partner is the one that wants the low-income housing tax credits.
Right.
Yep.
Do they provide the construction loan then?
Oh, they do not.
Okay.
I should say, there are actually, in some cases, when we have banks that are investors, I actually take that back, because sometimes when we have banks that are investors, such as PNC, if they can, they actually ask if they can provide a construction loan to help their return on the deal. So when we do have banks as investors, they are sometimes interested in providing that construction loan. And then what happens is as the property is acquired, the construction's being completed, the low-income housing, the $5.6 million of the low-income housing tax credit equity, a slug of that comes in at closing, and then that comes in later down the road at 50% completion, 75% completion. So there's monthly construction draws that are completed, and those are funded through that construction loan. And so what happens is it's funded through the construction loan, and then once we get to, say, 50% complete, then we have our investor who's also doing the construction loan on their lending arm, which I'll just stick with PNC. They make their equity installment for the purchase of the tax credits, and basically what happens is that equity installment just goes to pay down the construction loan.
So, I don't know if it's corporate counsel or you, Brian, that will answer that. Under 2 of the original questions that I had, you gave the answer, and then my next question to the answer was, and this has to do with the funds received from the sale of the property to the general partner, that those proceeds cannot be used for general fund, but must be used for the public good. That's what I was told. Is that true?
The HUD representative indicated that the proceeds that we would receive for the sale of the building would have to be utilized only for what we told HUD we would use that money for. So we put in an application and we say we would like to use the money for, and we list the projects that we would like to spend it on. If that application is approved by HUD, then we're allowed to spend the money on those specific projects or for those specific purposes. It's a very, very wide, overreaching definition, basically for the public good or for a public purpose. They don't want it just put into the general fund for county operating expenses, but you could use it for a variety of different purposes not related to housing, so long as it's within the public good, but that would have to be approved by HUD in the application process. If you stated 5 different things that you wanted to spend the money on and HUD approved 4 of them and not the 5th, then they would tell you, we don't approve of this 5th reason, you're going to have to resubmit the application with a different expenditure.
And just to add to that too, is we were on the same call together with the HUD representative, And he had stated that in many cases, when they see this happen, public housing converted, sometimes the sale proceeds are used for other housing projects that are owned by the county. In this instance, there are no other housing projects that are owned by the county. Or in some instances, he stated that those funds are used to develop new housing for the county. And he said, and if there was no, not a want or a need to do that, then he had stated that, the other options are, as Ms. Amber had stated, to list the projects that you want to spend the money on. And so it sounds like a pretty common process that's completed, and it's this application that he had stated, and it's sent into Chicago, and they review it. So unfortunately, that's just not an answer that we have on those sale proceeds until an application was absolutely submitted.
But the other money that is brought in through a percentage of the developer's fee is unrestricted, and that can be used for whatever the county wishes.
Yep, they did confirm that, yep.
So the developer fee or the monthly allotment could be then put into the general fund?
It could, it's unrestricted.
So worst case scenario is whatever those sale proceeds are. I know we have estimated at 1.7 million for now, but worst case scenario is those, well, I shouldn't say worst case scenario, but I mean, the good thing about it is that those sale proceeds are going to be used for the benefit of Bay County. So it's just a matter of, what the commissioners and everybody determines at what projects they would like to see completed with that and get it approved by HUD.
Could you tell us again, Brian, what the amount, the developer's fee, and then the sale of the 49% of Center Ridge Arms would amount to? And,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, what liability, that's probably a lot of people have that on their minds.
Yeah.
What liability financially does the county have? I know at one time, I think your last presentation said $51 application fee.
Right, yeah.
And this, if the commissioners were to approve this, this is the first step, and then could you outline, before the project was completed, and the oversight the county government and county board would have, a continuing process, revolving
Yeah.
process?
For your first question in regards to, so the sales price, what we have penciled in there is $1.7 million for a sales price. There'd be an appraisal done on the property. The certified needs analysis that I had mentioned would determine what needs to be actually spent on the rehab. So as all of these third-party reports are completed, market studies and whatnot for rents, the pro forma that we have today will change 100%. I can guarantee you that. It'll probably, Peter can attest to it. We just closed a deal a couple months ago, and we had 59 versions. We finally closed on the 59th version. Now, it didn't change substantially from the original version, but sometimes they do, and sometimes, just depending upon the circumstances of what needs to be done at the property. This property we think is, a great looking property. We think it'd be very successful. The developer fee is $849,000, and 51% of that would be $433,000 to Bay County. The cash flow is estimated to be about $60,000 a year, so there'd be about, I think I may have mentioned it last time, there's a asset management fee that's paid to the investor, and it's usually in the ballpark of $75 to $100 per unit. So in this case, it could be $7,500 to $10,000 a year to the investor. That's for their review of the tax return, and they like to come out and visit the property and make sure it's still standing and kick the tires on it. In regards to the liability, MHT is the sole guarantor on this project, and that would, everything, all the documentation that you would see, our investors require us to be the guarantor. They don't want other guarantors. They want us to be the guarantor because we're in the business of low-income housing tax credits, and we have the compliance experience behind us and the portfolio that we have. I think I may have mentioned it last time too. They review every time we do a deal. We have a long-term relationship we've been doing business with investors for 20 years, and we have a long-term relationship with them, but they have to go into a committee and get every deal approved. And they review every single one of our properties' performances on an annual basis to ensure that we don't have any issues going on with any of our properties. And if we have something that, you know, maybe dips below a 1.15 debt service coverage, and they see the rest of our portfolio is on average of 1.4, they'll ask us, they'll say, we're not concerned, but just out of curiosity, why is that one a little bit lower than the rest of these? So they're extremely thorough, so they're comfortable with us giving the guarantee. And even with us being the guarantor on the deal, in the new ownership coming in, I mean, right now, in my opinion, there would be less liability for the county right now, because right now Bay County owns that project outright 100%. And with the ownership change, Bay County would be 51% of the general partnership. We would be 49%. We'd be the sole guarantor. And we're on the hook for anything that comes up in regards to that property. So if the units are over income and the tax credit investor comes back and says, you know, we got this form from the IRS in the mail that you lost tax credits on that unit, then we're on the hook that we've got to reimburse them for what they paid for those tax credits. If there's ever any operating deficits at the property over the 15-year period, the investor looks to us to come, even though it's a non-recourse loan, we can't just let that project go and say it's a non-recourse loan, let's just give it back to HUD. You know, we've got low-income housing tax credits on that project, and, you know, we just wouldn't do that. Even if we didn't have low-income housing tax credits on that project, we wouldn't do that because we've got this report card that we've got to give to our investors on an annual basis. And if we have a property that has a foreclosure, they would just take us out of the mix, because that gives them, they have, you know, other options around the country that they can go invest in tax credit deals. So that would just take us out of the mix. So we're very cautious. We don't submit deals that are tight deals. We want them to be very healthy deals. So we would be the sole guarantor in regards to any of that. We're usually not concerned with those deficits, operating deficit guarantees, or the tax credit recapture, just due to the compliance department that we have, the experience. And the funds that are put in initially, there's an operating reserve that's funded at closing for all of these low-income housing tax credit deals. And that's not a fund that's there that projects out it's going to have to be used. It's just there as a cushion in case 10 years down the road rents aren't what they are supposed to be. You know, or if Section 8 for some reason was pulled back and not funded, if there's a problem with the federal government, they just wanted to have that cushion there. So we have this operating reserve that would get burned through before we would have to step up and start funding those operating deficits. In regards to the management, I think that was your last question that you had. We have our own management company. It's called Continental Management. We manage about 10,000 units. We manage all of our properties, and we manage some foreclosed properties that HUD foreclosed on or MSHDA foreclosed on because they've came to us and asked us to manage. We manage other third-party management contracts. But here, if that was something that Bay County would have came and said, look, this property's a mess, we're doing a horrible job, we need a management agent, you know, would you guys be interested? We would definitely do that. We have that business. We've started that business in November of 2003. But in this case here, we were impressed with the management of the property. It's well kept, it's clean. We haven't did a unit by unit inspection. We haven't got up on the roof. That all happens with the CNA that's completed. But in this case here, it's our understanding that the county would like to retain managing that and retain the staff that is there. They're very happy with the staff and the management. And I can see why. We were impressed with it also. So we would have no interest at all in being the management agent for this property. So we would be the 49% general partner. We'd be on the hook for all of the operating deficits. We put together the tax credit application. We put together all of the construction draws. We submit the annual compliance on an annual basis. We have the work with the auditors. Well, in this case, Bay County would be working with the financial auditor because all the financial records would be located here. But anything that there is outside of that, the management, we would be taking care of. And we're always there if anything is needed also.
Would that also include renegotiating the pilot agreement in the township?
Correct, yeah.
What was that? Renegotiating?
The pilot agreement that's currently in place with Hampton Township.
Oh, Hampton. Now, do we get to see all that before we agree to it?
See all what?
Well, the pilot and the value of the assessment of the property and what we're gonna get, or do we agree to this and then everything else comes back to us?
The actual documents, the agreements that are signed after this point in time, after the MOU, would be reviewed by council for the county.
And voted on by the board.
The terms would be voted on by the board. Yes, it would be the same as any other contract.
It's not.
And I get it, and I know this is all new. I don't know if it's new for everybody in regards to low-income housing tax credits, but I started with the company years ago, and I was always in the property management business, so I was a controller for a property management company, so I had no idea that low-income housing tax credits even existed. And it's something that not a lot of people are aware of, usually just in conversation, and someone asks, what I do for a living, I just tell them we're in the affordable housing business. And fortunately, I've got to spend a couple of visits with you guys explaining it, to go over it, because it can be a bit of a complex process, and it's a lot to take in regards to that. So if anyone was curious too, if you go on the Michigan State Housing Development's website, they've got a window on there called low-income housing tax credits, and they give examples of how tax credits work. It's kind of a good 101 for if somebody was interested kind of on how it works from a basis standpoint.
One last question, Brian. There was some talk about continuing financial assistance to support the management team during the duration of the contract. Can you speak to that?
What is that in regards to?
I think it's the management fee that would be paid to the county for management.
Oh, yes, yeah, great question. Yeah, right, and I think this may have got brought up last time too. But, right now, Center Ridge Arms doesn't pay a management fee to Bay County at all. It's managed by Bay County, and there's not an actual fee that's submitted to Bay County. Moving forward, if we were able to move forward and get a tax credit reservation and close on this project, Bay County would be the management agent, and they would get paid on a monthly basis a management fee for actually managing the project. So that would be, and it's not a large fee. See if I can get there before Peter. Yeah, well, it actually is. It's more than what I thought it was going to be, but we've got in here $508 per unit, which is $50,800 a year management fee. That would go to Bay County for managing the project.
Maybe 15 years? Approximately.
Yeah, that would be really for perpetuity.
Okay, so as I see it, we're looking to get the MOU approved, the one that was brought to us a few weeks ago.
Authority to sign an MOU, there are a couple of paragraphs that need to be tweaked a little bit, but just authority to sign the MOU with the understanding that we're going to be proceeding with the process.
Right, and then once.
Support.
Once that is done, we'll have other documents that, you are gonna as corporate counsel gonna review.
Yes.
But will we have to approve those? Those would be, I believe, the development agreement, the operating agreement.
Correct. And the original resolution, I think, that we had submitted was to give the board chair the authority to sign the memorandum of understanding to start the process, and that he would have the authority after any subsequent agreements were reviewed to sign those agreements in accordance with the, what was set forth in the MOU.
Okay. So Bob, do you have any questions?
Well, yes.
Okay.
It's more regards from a county point of view that we have a, let's say, $1 million asset or whatever it's going to be. And obviously other companies don't do this. Why we wouldn't seek out the best deal?
Okay. Does the board understand?
Also to get a better definition of what we can spend the money on, rather than submit what we want to do with it and then get denied or, you know, look at some other projects. I mean, there's 2 deadlines, as I recall, you said at the previous meeting, April and October.
For filing,
Pardon?
right? Filing did.
Correct, yep.
And who would hire the appraiser? I mean, usually it's the property owner that hires the appraiser to determine the value.
Brian, do you know who hires the appraisers at the HUD level?
HUD would hire the appraiser. Mhm. Yeah, we don't have any say-so in it.
It'd be a third party.
Yeah. Mhm.
As it relates to what the property can be used for, I actually did speak with the representative of HUD, and until you submit that application stating these are the purposes that we intend to use the money, they consider it, because they consider it at the Chicago office, they give you no guarantee or further definition of what's going to be approved until they look at your actual application and what you're suggesting the money be spent for. So unfortunately, I don't think that there is any way that the board's going to get an answer or a more substantial answer to the question other than for the public good. This is the tiering that we like to see. First, if you have existing housing units, we would like you to reinvest in that. We don't. If you're interested, or if there's an outstanding need for the county to run more affordable housing, can you look at that? In our particular case, there isn't that interest. So then it falls to the third tier, which is just other money spent for the public good, but it can't be for the general operating expenses of the county. And I don't know if there are, I don't know how many entities there are like MHT in the state of Michigan. Can you explain a little bit? I mean, one question could be, why doesn't the county do this on its own? What do we need MHT for? Other than the obvious complete application process, because we haven't been through this on a daily basis. It's my understanding that the company that's putting in the application with HUD or with Michigan for the tax credits, you get a certain number of points assessed to you based on how long you've been doing this and how much experience that you have. Is that accurate? Could you explain that a little bit?
Correct,
more?
yeah. Yeah, the requirements from MSHA's standpoint is, number one, and most importantly, is a great solid application, because if you have an error with the title work, we have in-house counsel also, and you can have something as little as an error on the title work, and after spending, $30,000, $40,000 to put together a low-income housing tax credit application, if there is an error in the title work, they'll throw it aside and throw it out, and they won't even go through it and score it. So it's, first and foremost, is having a good, solid, complete application. The other thing that you need to have is certain equity. The sponsor, which would be MHT, has to have a certain amount of net assets in order to submit that application. And then what you had touched on is we have to submit our experience, and our experience goes back to 1991 on these deals. I'm not aware of any other developers that started back in 1991 in Michigan. And of all those years, we've never had an 8823, and we've never had a foreclosure, which I think any other developers would be hard pressed to be able to say that, that has not occurred. The other thing that we have to have in regards to getting a tax credit investor, and they require also a certain amount of liquidity on the balance sheet and the experience that we have. And we've just got a great relationship. Every time we submit a tax credit application, as soon as MSHDA publishes the applications that are submitted, we have investors outside of the current investor that we have investing in the deal calling us to see if they can submit a proposal. So we have a very good relationship with that. The other piece is with HUD. There are some developers out there that cannot get HUD loans because they have this thing they call a 2530, which is basically a report card for any projects that you have that have Section 8 or that have HUD loans. And they do, I don't know if anybody's heard of REAC inspections, but I know Center Ridge Arms, I believe, has them now. And if you fall below a certain level on a REAC inspection, if you don't file an audit on time, there's a number of items that your 2530 can get flagged, and if your 2530 gets flagged, then it bars you from doing any new HUD loans or Section 8 deals until that's corrected, or if it can't be corrected, then you're just, barred for life on those. One thing with MHT is we're the largest landlord in the city of Detroit for low-income housing tax credits. That's kind of where we started our portfolio. But we range, I had mentioned last time, we have properties in Grand Rapids and Traverse City. We have Maplewood Manor, which I had mentioned last time we were here. I believe that we are the largest landlord in the Bay County area right now, so we're very familiar with the area. We do have properties that we manage in the area. We don't manage Maplewood Manor because they kind of had the same situation. They had said, we're happy with their management, we're happy with their employees, can we continue to manage? And we said, absolutely. And so we do not manage that project. But we have a phenomenal reputation, a flawless reputation. We could give the head of tax credit, we could give you if you wanted the head of tax credit at Michigan State Housing Development Authority, we could give you the name of the head of asset management at MSHDA, the head of asset management at HUD. You could call any of our investors. I guarantee you, you would get a stellar response from any of them in regards to the reputation of our company. So there are other low-income housing tax credit developers out there for sure. Like I said, it's even a national program. There's not a lot of developers that I think would be willing to, not to belittle this deal. It's a 100-unit deal, and it's an $849,000 developer fee. It's a lot of money, but I don't think that many other developers are going to give up 51% of that, and the reason being is because there's all of the risk we bear all of that risk. So we put together this tax credit application, and if we don't get a reservation in April, if we were able to move forward in April, then we would, if given the opportunity, we would be applying in October. But if we don't get that reservation, we haven't submitted and eventually got a reservation. So sometimes it just depends on the funding round and who submits. But we're on the hook for 100% of that, and any other developer would be also. And as I had mentioned in regards to the tax credit recapture and the operating deficits, it's just a lot of risk. We've seen other low-income housing tax credit developers go down from one bad deal. And like a deal like this, and we're not a huge company. We're an employee. We've got, our management company has about 400 employees, but we've only got like 12 employees at MHT, so we're a small company. We've got, everybody has been there long-term. Peter's probably our newest, and he's been here over a year now. He came from college into our company. He had interned previously and decided to come back to our company. So there's just a lot of risk there. Like here, there's $5.6 million of tax credit equity. We're a healthy company, but if all of that tax credit recapture, got taken back, if for some reason, all of the units were rented to people that were over income and it couldn't be corrected, and the investor comes back and says, we want that $5.6 million back that we gave you, we'd be toast also. There's just a lot of risk, and that's why we've seen other developers go down from having one bad deal, and we've never had a bad deal. And we started back in 1990, so there are other developers out there, but there's a lot of, and the same thing, even if you talk, like I said, to HUD and MSHDA and ask them, they wouldn't want to give you names, but they would tell you that there's been a lot of developers that have had some really bad deals, and so I just honestly say that we've got a stellar reputation, and we think it's a very fair deal that is being proposed.
Commissioner Ranchak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a comment, I'm going to be in support of this proposal also. Not that I don't trust everybody and everything, but right after the last meeting, I went online and you do MHT, and it's page after page and screen after screen of all the cities that they've done projects in. They're doing something right here, folks. I think this is definitely the organization that Bay County should be with. I'll be voting yes.
Thank you.
So I believe there was a motion made in the midst of all this, and a second, correct?
Correct.
Right. And what was the motion for?
The MOU. For the signature.
To give the board chair authority to sign the MOU and any subsequent agreement necessary to effectuate the MOU.
That be correct?
Took the words out of your mouth.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have support. I believe since this will be, I don't know, it's not the board meeting, but should we?
It can go in.
Huh?
It can go on next week's meeting, if that's what you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, anything we approve here has to go there anyhow.
Right. I just thought, maybe you thought the agenda was done or something.
No. So if we approve it here, it'll go there. We could do a roll call vote there, based on sale of property, right? Because I think that's what we'll need eventually, is to have a roll call vote.
We've never roll call vote. It doesn't necessarily need to take place until the actual agreement to sell the property.
No. So, just a voice vote is fine. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your answers to my questions.
You're welcome. They were
And
great.
their questions.
They were great questions today and previously, so.
So now, we go to child care services. Hope everybody didn't fall asleep back there. So, under B1, we have the MMRMA RAP grant.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next, under B2, we have the RAP grant, and this one's for the intercom system.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Director of Administrative Services, now we have another MMRMA grant for the fire range at Pink County Park.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next, under C2, we have the MMRMA RAP grant for the independent security audit.
So moved.
Support. We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Next, under D, we have the Director of Department on Aging, the amendment to Amendment G of the vendor agreement with A&D Home Healthcare Incorporated.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Commissioner Keenan.
Does anybody know how long we retain the records at this time?
7 years.
It's going to go to 10 now?
7 years, yeah, starting January 1, they bump it up to 10 years.
Okay, that's all done electronically.
Yes, well, some of it, it's stored paper-wise, too. Depends on what the state and request.
Okay.
Doug, one question. Does all of our records ever get on electronic medium so we don't have to store them on paper?
Region 7 requires that we keep paper records as in their regulations, so we don't do cherry line with them.
Oh, okay.
We keep a paper record. If you see 7 years now, it's 10.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Under item E, we have the GIS manager, GIS data sharing agreements for the various townships and cities in Bay County.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion?
Well, Laura, it looks like you're going to give us some information.
Yes,
She's been patiently waiting back there, but.
thank you very much. I did talk to Amber, thank you, Chair, on this resolution, which is beautiful, by the way. Under the resolved, we just need to add where it says that the Bay County Board of Commissioners authorizes the board chair to execute the GIS data sharing agreements. Those are the standard agreements with local units of government, waiving the fees.
So if it were to read data sharing agreements with local units of government and their consultants, and to waive fees for those local units of government.
Following Corporation Council review and approval, and that would be absolutely perfect.
And in case the board is wondering, the reason that we need to do this is we're in the process of amending the policy regarding the GIS data sharing agreements. Right now, the policy requires each and every time one of these agreements gets entered into, that you have to waive the fees for them if it's a municipal entity. We're trying to avoid that process, so we're going to be amending the policy, and this will allow Laura to not have to go before the board each time she wants to.
Right. And then, thank you, and I would add then, we've never charged fees for this, because this is their data. This is, if it's a private consultant coming in for, say, a private subdivision development, we absolutely would charge. The local units of government, as part of the county, the townships, the city, if they're doing a public project, they would have their consultant, it would be them or their consultant that would submit this information or request for a certain period of time to utilize this data, and then they pull it off their machine, they sign that they will not use it, not sell it, in fact, extract it off of their computer system. And we've never charged for that, because they're part of the county, it's part of their data, street center line, parcel data, et cetera. Yes.
Can you explain under finance and economics, historically, the GIS data has been shared with the drain office for free. Now it's still going to be for free, right?
Right. This would allow that standard, the way we have been doing it, that local units, including the drain office or the townships or the city, would not be charged for use of this data. The policy, however, as Amber points out, which we've not been aware of, but the policy says we would need to come here to get a waiver each time this thing is signed. And so that's what we're saying. Amber has agreed to redo the policy, to update that policy draft, and so to make it more consistent with what practice has been. So we have.
It doesn't look like anybody's going to be charged within the county,
That's correct. We haven't charged. We intend not to charge, and Amber has identified the need to do some housekeeping for policy in order for it to reflect current practice.
So you got that fancy new language? Okay.
I'll amend my motion
Yeah, we need to, make sure that,
to include Ms. Amber's recommendation.
And it's still a beautiful motion.
It is. It's beautiful.
A resolution.
The resolution, right, the resolved.
okay, we have the amended motion and the amended support too, correct? No. And so, all those in favor, any other discussion, by the way? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, under F, we have the payables, Bayonet, Center Ridge Arms. What is your
So moved.
support? We have a motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under G, we have two items. G1 is the analysis of the general fund equity. Motion to receive would be in order. And to add the update to the executive directive, all in one motion to receive.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support to receive these two. All in favor? Oh, Commissioner?
Just a question, on the 26,000 on the two muters, the dehumidification systems at the arena, is that something that we picked up off basic maintenance, or did they go down?
We asked for 26,000, gosh, it's been quite a few months ago, for the Munters units. We had a desiccant wheel that went down. And so over the summer, when we only had one sheet of ice, we had to replace that desiccant wheel. And then we also had some other little maintenance items to do at the same time. But now it's all in place and everything's all set to go. In the 2018 budget, we asked for basically a maintenance agreement so they can come out and make sure that those units are working properly, because they're massive units and there's two of them.
Right, so I thought last year when we discussed the age of them and the fact that there wasn't any routine maintenance done on them, that we were going to start that program, but we didn't then. But it will be.
We did, because when we determined that we needed to replace the desiccant wheel, we had a staff person come out from the Munters unit and take a look at them and make adjustments. Now, going forward, we're going to enter into like a regular maintenance agreement, and that was in the 2018 budget, so that we will be doing that very shortly. We don't want to bring the guy out to look at our units too close together in time, because we want to get the most bang for our bucks. We want to set,
Some space.
some space, right.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a little tricky to be on the roof this time of year.
Sorry about their inconvenience.
When you're trying to cool stuff in the middle of negative 20-degree weather. So, anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Next, referrals, we don't have any. We don't have any unfinished business that I know of. We have two items that are on your desk. The first will be the Bay County Sheriff to participate in the medical marijuana oversight grant.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Good to go there. And next, we have the Michigan Veterans Trust Fund. This was something that was sent to us over the weekend, and basically we're that the Board of Commissioners receives a request from the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, Michigan Veterans Trust Fund regarding the MTF assistance in Bay County, and concur with the decision of the Soldiers Relief Commission and the local Michigan Veterans Trust Fund Committee that will keep it here in Bay County.
So moved.
Support.
We have motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. No closed session,
There is not.
okay. Any miscellaneous? Announcements?
Motion to adjourn, it's always in order.
Motion and support, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.